Imagine a city where even the dust on the ground shines. This is Alkapuri, a mythical metropolis built entirely of pure gold and radiant jewels. At its center sat Kubera, the god of wealth and the absolute master of all material riches in the universe. He possessed every physical treasure in existence. But when a person controls that much capital, their identity often becomes entirely bound to their physical possessions. Kubera began to see his own worth exclusively through the elaborate jewelry and infinite vaults under his command. This creates a dangerous psychological state, known in Vedic philosophy as ahankar, or absolute ego. When a person acquires infinite wealth but lacks a deeper spiritual purpose, it carves out a hollow space inside the mind that no amount of gold can fill. And ego demands an audience. Gold has no power if it is sitting isolated in a vault. Kubera needed someone to validate his supremacy, which meant he had to display his infinite reserves to someone completely immune to them. He found his target at the very edge of the world. Mount Kailash is a freezing, barren wasteland. It is the domain of Lord Shiva, a deity living in absolute asceticism, detached from all material desires. Kubera arrived at this desolate peak to invite Shiva to a grand 56-course feast. He designed this invitation as a direct display of power. He wanted to parade his wealth in front of the supreme ascetic to see if he could make a god of stone feel small. Shiva saw the intent behind the invitation immediately. He declined the offer. Instead, he sent his young son, Ganesha, in his place, leaving Kubera with a warning: do not mistake this child for a normal guest. Kubera dismissed the warning. He judged the universe entirely by physical size and shiny metals. By looking down at a small child, he failed to recognize the infinite force hidden inside him. When Ganesha arrived at Alkapuri, Kubera offered a smug presentation of exotic foods. He stacked mountains of delicacies before the boy, certain that a child's appetite would be overwhelmed by the first course. Ganesha took his first bite. In an instant, the entire initial feast vanished. Panic rippled through the golden halls. Thousands of royal cooks desperately emptied the kitchens, pouring out rivers of milk and carting in thousands of backup plates. Ganesha consumed it all in seconds and demanded more. A massive, rigid golden pyramid representing Kubera's reserves drains into a dark, endlessly expanding void representing Ganesha's capacity. The void never fills. Kubera spent his life accumulating, and now watched his relentless hunger take a physical, terrifying shape. Kubera had built his life on the idea that enough gold could satisfy any appetite. But as the mountains of grain vanished, he was learning that 1 trillion coins are meaningless when they're being poured into a void that has no bottom. When the food ran out, Ganesha didn't stop. He ate the silver spoons. He ate the golden plates. He chewed through the jewel-encrusted furniture. The wealthiest heaven in the universe suffered a total architectural collapse. Walls dissolved and pillars vanished as Alkapuri was reduced to a chaotic, hollowed-out ruin. Finally, Ganesha cornered the god of wealth himself. With the city gone, Ganesha announced that since his hunger remained, he would simply eat Kubera next. Materialism had reached its limit. Kubera's own obsession had been turned back on him, stripping the self-proclaimed master of all worlds down to nothing but terrified prey. Abandoning his ruined kingdom, Kubera fled back to the freezing peaks of Mount Kailash. He threw himself at the feet of Shiva and Parvati in absolute desperate surrender. Goddess Parvati stepped forward. To stop the total destruction of Kubera's world, she didn't offer a more powerful army or a bigger vault. She simply handed him a handful of plain roasted rice. She told him to offer it with bhav, genuine humility. The lesson was simple. The divine cannot be bought with material bribes, but it responds instantly to the weight of a person's intention. Kubera's entire golden civilization had been devoured in an afternoon, yet this single grain, offered without the weight of his pride, was the only thing heavy enough to tip the scales back to peace. Kubera returned to the wreckage of Alkapuri. Stripped of his pride, he presented the plain rice to Ganesha. The response was instant. The moment Ganesha consumed the rice offered with genuine surrender, the fire inside him was extinguished. Ganesha left the humbled god with a final instruction. Wealth is not a tool for ego. You must act as its disciplined protector rather than its arrogant owner. Greed will always eventually turn around and consume the person who harbors it. True, lasting power only exists when you master your own ego.